Hello, Gordon here. Hope all is well with you. This Facebook Live I've called Stand And Ollie because I went to see Stand And Ollie yesterday at the cinema. I haven't been to the cinema for a long time. In fact, the last film I'd seen before that was The Last Jedi, Star Wars, which must have been December 2017. So I haven't been to the cinema for the whole of 2018. And I love the cinema. The big screen, the noise, the seats. I love the cinema. But I don't like the prices paying for the cinema, and I don't like being disturbed by other people in the cinema. So I've ended up just waiting to see these things on TV. Star Wars was enough of a pull to get me back to the cinema, and so was Stan and Ollie. Plus a nice little weekday afternoon discount didn't do any harm to my prospects of going. But I'm going to talk about the film, but while we're on the subject of me not going to the cinema, those are not the only reasons why I don't go to the cinema. And the other reason is quite an emotional reason. I'm not going to cover it particularly in this video. I'm still trying to decide whether to share it or not. But the emotional and personal reasons for me is actually meant that for many years I didn't want to go to the cinema. I didn't want to be in a cinema. So that's a story for another time. But anyway, Stan and Ollie, yes. A film starring Steve Coogan and John C. Reilly about Laurel and Hardy and them on a tour of the UK. It turned out to be their last tour of the UK. And as with any movie, there is plenty of artistic license. Because they did tour the UK. Toured the UK a few times in the 50s. And what I say about the artistic license, there's Ollie having a heart attack and retiring and the tour finishing. Actually, the tour they finished after a tour in 1954. And there's a big scene about them having an argument at an after-show reception, public reception. Artistic license is quite, well, it's not pivotal to the film, but it's an important scene in the film. And, you know, it's artistic license. But it's a lovely film. I'm describing it as warm and gentle and affectionate. That the people who made it and starred in it have an affection for Laurel and Hardy, for the movies, for vaudeville/music hall, and the nostalgia and the history and the personal stories. Which, as you know, if you follow me for any length of time, I also have a passion for. So you can see why it was a film that would appeal to me, and I loved it just as much as I thought I'd like it. And I did find a few tears, a few leakage from the eye, a bit of eye leakage going on at a couple of times in the movie. Yeah, really nice, and I was struck by the goal achievement. Here's a goal achievement point about entertainers. In this case, the live side of entertainment, because it was all about what goes on behind the scenes. It dealt with what goes on in front of the scenes, in front of the camera, on stage, in front of a live audience, but it focused on what happens behind the scenes, behind the stage, backstage, and between shows. Now, I know all about that with my performing experience, about arguments backstage and the hard work and chaos and the struggles that goes on backstage, travelling around between venues, etc., etc., and the grind of that, the challenge of that, and then you switch it on and go into this make-believe fantasy world to present the product for the audience. And you have to remember, as performers should remember, that if the audience has paid to see that show, or particularly if they've paid to see that show, it's the first time they've seen it. It might be the one and only time they've seen it. So it might be the 100th time or more that you've performed it, but you have to treat it as a first. So you put everything into it. That's what performers should be doing. And that's what Laurel and Hardy did. But Laurel and Hardy came from difficult backgrounds. Hardy had a very difficult background. Laurel's background was less challenging. But the goal achievement side for Laurel was that as he was starting as a performer, he ended up joining Fred Karno's troupe, and Laurel said he was the biggest at the time. Took the opportunity to go to the States with Fred Karno and assumed it would just be that trip and then he'd come back to London. But he decided to stay there. So he had generated that opportunity for himself, took the opportunity, and then the opportunity went in a way that he didn't expect it to, and it changed the direction of his life. He ended up doing various writing and directing roles, as well as being in front of the camera as well, and did a couple of movies under Hal Roach with another actor called Oliver Hardy. And I've covered Hardy's story previously. He had a more challenging upbringing, but ended up in the movies, going to acting school, being paid for by his mother, which was fortunate, who struggled herself. Being a jobbing actor, moving several times, ended up in Los Angeles, California, with Hal Roach, and some of the movies working with another actor called Stan Laurel. And Hal Roach put them together. This partnership started and they got to the top of the world, famous all over the world. But here's the point about goal achievement. Once they got to the top, because they worked hard for it, they worked hard to get to the top, they worked very hard when they were at the top, but they didn't stay at the top, because no one stays at the top unless they die at the top. So they were on the downward curve, but they were still working hard while getting older, while their health was deteriorating, still working hard, still travelling around, schlepping around the country, schlepping across to Europe, staying in hotels and trudging around on stages. That's what entertainers do, that's what performers do, that's their life. And people just take it for granted when you see an old Laurel and Hardy film, or any performer, whether that's in music or the movies or the music, maybe sport, which is entertainment, all these careers. There's the hard work to get to the very top, which hardly any get to the very top. And then even those that get to the very top will come down again afterwards. So it's a real goal achievement story, isn't it? Involving passions in life as well. Yeah, if you haven't seen Stand And Ollie, go and see it. It's quite slow paced. I've heard some people describe it as boring. Actually, the reviews are pretty much generally positive, because it is a warm, gentle, affectionate film, as I've said before. It really pushed my buttons. And I think anyone would like it, actually, because I'm going to say, does everyone know who Laurel and Hardy are? Well, not everyone does, particularly the young uns nowadays. I feel like a young un, but oh dear, I'm not. A lot of people, let's put it like this, a lot of people will know full well who Laurel and Hardy were. Yes, really enjoyed it. So let me know what you think. Let me know what you think about this goal achievement journey that people go to, working hard to get to the top, working hard at the top, and then carrying on having to work once it starts coming down again. Have you seen Stan and Ollie? What did you think of it? And if you're one of the people who don't or didn't know who Laurel and Hardy were, I'd like to know maybe how old you are and what's the first time you came across Laurel and Hardy. And you can find out more about the goal achievement side of things at my Transform Your Life Now program, transformyourlifenow.com. And when it comes to wealth creation, which is one of the tenets of my message, isn't it? Self-improvement, goal achievement, wealth creation. turning passions into profits. Actually, I used the movies as one of the first times I did it. And you can find out more about that over at fbpassionprofits.com/chat, where I put a video there covering my 3-2-1 breakdown of the basics of turning passions into profits. So, hope all is well with you. Signing off for now and wishing you as ever health and happiness. Ooh, go and see Stand And Ollie if you've never seen it. And I'll speak to you again soon.